God wants you to fully enjoy sex. That's right. God wants you to enjoy sex. He is in full support of you enjoying sex. He created it and declared it good. But then there is a time for everything. I said this often to singles, and much to your dismay, because I want them to understand the gift of sex, but only in the confines of marriage. I want them to look forward to it and know that it is worth the wait. I want them to understand the struggles that they may face in this if it feels good do it generation. In fact, God tells us in the very first chapter of the Bible to be fruitful and multiply. In other words, that means have great sex and enjoy each other. I know some will say it is the 21st century after all. Surely such old-fashioned ideologies are outdated. But let me tell you this, the creator of sex does have a manual to guide us, and his way is always the best one. And you know, doing the right thing at the wrong time is still very much doing the wrong thing. So although sex is a good thing, but when you do it and who you do it with, that what actually makes it bad. Now here's one, or rather some reasons why sex is worth waiting for and should be done at the right time. You can find it scattered all over in the Bible. Sex before marriage is not glorifying to God. And living a life to glorify God is the best life that you can live. Some people see God's law as religious restrictions that leads to a boring lifestyle. But nothing can be farther from the truth than that. All of God's laws are not just ways to avoid bad things and things not good for us. In fact, what God's laws does is that it points us to the best deals and things that we can get. At the heart of everything we are told to do in the Bible, there is this one command to glorify God. God gave us this purpose, not only because He deserves all the glory, but also because a life of glorifying God is the best life that any man or woman can ever experience. Since premarital sex does not glorify God, when you commit this sin, you are deliberately making a choice not to experience your best life. 1 Corinthians 6 verse 13 and 20 tells us the body is not meant for sexual immorality, but for the Lord, and the Lord for the body. So glorify God in your body. So that's what we should be doing, alright? Glorifying and edifying God with our bodies. And then again, premarital sex can also be unhelpful in singleness, especially if you want to be married, because it leads to long periods of dating without actual commitment. So what about the cow when you can get the milk for free? Sex before marriage decreases your chances of getting married at all. And do you know that sex before marriage decreases your chances of getting married at all? When two persons start acting or living together like they are married, when in reality they are not, naturally there comes that lesser motivation to actually get married. And also premarital sex introduces sin into relationship, which over time ends up tearing two people apart rather than pulling them together. Because when you choose to worship each other rather than worship God, you eventually end up becoming satisfied with each other, because there is no man or woman that is able to replace the hole inside of you when God is absent. The more you run from God and towards a person, the more likely that relationship's gonna fail. Sex before marriage will create problems in marriage. Because when you've had multiple sex partners before marriage, it is negatively going to affect you when you start wanting to stay committed and when you should be staying committed. Men and women who've had other sexual partners before marrying each other reported lesser marital satisfaction than those who had each other as their first. This is usually because it is not when you say I do that all the other options disappears from your mind. And yeah, Christ can solve these problems, but it will take a lot of hard work that could be avoided if you don't have premarital sex. Then again, even if you marry the person you have premarital sex with, this can also create issues for you later on in marriage. Great sex in marriage is rooted in real love for your spouse. If you have sex oftentimes before marriage, the spouse will later start to wonder if you just wanted him or her for the sex. If your spouse doubts your love, it's going to result in an unhealthy marriage. This is especially true from the wife's perspective. If they have marital sex, the wife might wonder, would my husband have committed to date me if I did not give him sex? Can I trust my husband or wife to resist all the sexual temptations when he or she couldn't resist sexual temptations with me during dating and courting? And then you start to have this doubt about your spouse, which can later create a big gap in your marriage. And then again, what premarital sex does is that it also masks and hides problems. Sex outside of marriage is dangerous because it is meant to bond a husband and wife together. When a boyfriend and a girlfriend start having sex, it creates bonds that shouldn't be there. And when God gets to telling you to break up, you ain't gonna be listening. You're gonna find it hard to do this, all because of your premarital sexual sin. When you are having sex in a relationship, what's the point in really evaluating it? Why would you? You're giving each other what you need. You might wonder sometimes if you're in love or if you could spend the rest of your life with this person, but you are never really forced to look deeply into it. However, when you are not having sex, you are forced to really examine things. Let me give you an example of a brother who was having sex with his girlfriend, and when we got to talking, he said he wasn't sure if he was really in love or if the relationship was leading to marriage. Know what I told him to do? I told him to stop all sexual activity with this girl. And guess what? All the real issues came right up before his eyes. And although through the gospel, God can break these bonds, but dating is much easier when sex isn't involved. A dating couple should never stay together for sexual reasons. When you don't have sex, it is much easier to break up. If you are really in love, then get married. If you are really in love, then get married. But if you are not, stop wasting each other's time, because you could waste years of each other's lives with sexual activities. Sex before marriage also signifies that you do not trust God's best for you. You shouldn't engage in premarital sex because it is not God's best for you. Oh, I thought by now you should have known that if you want God's best for you, you must obey His word. You will have to make short-term sacrifices if you want to experience the long-term benefits of following God. Ultimately, our views on sex and marriage says a lot about how we trust in God. Do I trust that God is a good father? Do I trust that He knows better than I do? Do I trust that He is never motivated by cruelty or indifference towards me, but instead by His desire to do what's best for me? Do I trust that His plan for sex and marriage is best no matter what? Pursuing sex outside of marriage is a quest for freedom. Freedom from God's instruction. In Genesis chapter 3, Eve pursued freedom from God's commandment as her highest goal, but she didn't find freedom. She received separation from God and animosity with others because God's flawless design for her greatest good vanished. Her distrust in God brought her into bondage instead of the freedom and liberation she sought. And the same is true when we sidestep God's commandments in our daily lives, choosing what we prefer over what God has ordained. So why settle? Why settle for any sexual expression that is less than God's best for you? If you have trusted God with your soul, you can certainly trust Him with your sexuality.